Live from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Tonight we're going to be talking about nonpartisan redistricting. And I'm joined tonight by Olga Hernandez, who is with the League of Women Voters in Fairfax and the former president of the Virginia League of Women Voters. Thank you so much for joining me.
And thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be here to speak about this important topic.
Well, you have been involved in this for a very long time. I can't think of a better person who knows more about the subject than you. But let's start with the fact that you are celebrating a birthday tomorrow, and that is the birthday of the League of Women Voters.
Yes, the 97th anniversary of the founding of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is strictly a nonpartisan organization. We come from the women's suffrage movement since 1848. It took 72 years to ratify the 19th Amendment, which we were at the forefront of pushing. And then in 1920, we actually founded the organization as you know it today, the League of Women Voters. We are national. We have chapters all across the country. And basically what we do is we provide education and teach people how to advocate for issues. We never endorse candidates, left or right.
Right.
We absolutely try to treat all candidates neutrally. We provide information in studies on issues of public policy. We provide candidate forums for the public to make their own decisions. We provide voter guides online at vote411.org. Also in print in Fairfax County. Not all leagues do it in print. We do with the Fairfax Times. And we provide this brochure, which is our signature topic, and it's a listing of everybody that represents you and how to contact them, from the president to the Department of Planning and Zoning and everybody in between. So it's a great brochure. It's available at your supervisor office and your public libraries in the Fairfax area. So we do a lot of things. We also provide forums. The State League will have a debate this year, probably sometime in October, for the gubernatorial race. And that's very important because Virginia has an election every year. This year, we have an election of the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and the entire House of Delegates, which is 100 members from across the state. So that's part of what we do. We are a volunteer organization, and we have had a lot of growth this year since the election.
That's what I've heard. I mean, that's, the interest in the League of Women Voters, and there have been a lot of reports kind of surrounding the Women's March. A lot of people have never been involved in politics before. A lot of women have never been involved in politics before, and suddenly they have awakened as a group. And I think maybe people are discovering you who you weren't on their radar.
I want to emphasize we have male and women members. The name remains League of Women Voters because it is a legacy brand, and we have a lot of credibility, and right now credibility is being challenged. And so a lot of people are coming to us to find out how to be involved, how to advocate, and how to participate in the political process. Not just by voting, but by being educated. And so this is what we do in the community.
And you do a lot of things locally. We just had a mayor's race in Fairfax City.
Yes.
A very weird kind of special election, very off year.
Yes.
But you hosted a mayoral forum, and that's just one of the many services that you provide to localities.
And those are done in public places generally. We had a room.
It was packed.
Overcrowded.
I was in the doorway.
Probably about 240 people showed up for this one little mayoral race in a city that has 24,000 people only. So this is what we do. We're very good at doing them because we have the credibility, so we can get candidates to participate with us because they know they will be treated fairly. And what we want to do is give you the information for you to make your decision in the best way possible. Because sometimes here, especially in Northern Virginia, we are more likely to get news about DC
right.
than our local community.
Right, that is true. We're overshadowed by national news.
And participation in elections at the local level sometimes really drop off the voter turnout. And so we think even those close to you elections like school boards
absolutely.
And
Board of Supervisors,
town mayorals,
council. Yeah.
Those are very important because those are the people that affect your life a lot more directly.
Absolutely, and I think that people kind of miss that when they're focused on the Capitol here in our region and not looking at policies made by the Board of Supervisors or their town council. So how do you choose what issues the League of Women Voters decides to focus on as far as bringing information to the public?
Well, we have principles that there should be open government and that government should be funded appropriately so that it serves the community. So we have issues ranging from environmental issues, but we concentrate a lot on election laws, redistricting, and all that implies. There's been a big move around the country to tighten election laws, and what it has done to some communities is restricted access to the ballot. And so we want that process to be open. We were very happy that the state allowed online voter registration a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's
so that, and we encourage everybody before the election to go online and check their registration to make sure that when they show up,
they're registered.
They're on the rolls. Because I'm an election officer, I've been an election officer in 3 different states over 30 years. And when you show up and you're not on the rolls, you may not be allowed to vote. And that is a shame. So you are responsible to check your voter registration, to change your address, to make sure you are current in the address where you live. Okay? And there's a lot of talk right now about voter fraud and such. We observed the state electoral board. We observed the Fairfax County electoral board for the process of how things work. We were at the table after the 2012 election where there were long lines and such, and we advocated for good funding to provide election officers with better pay, to recruit people that were qualified, to make sure that the county was very good about buying new equipment that was more accessible and dealt with the lines. So even though Fairfax County had an over 80% turnout rate this last presidential election, we hardly saw lines because we were able to process people very quickly. And that's an important process because people get discouraged. If you've got to get to your job and you're going to be in line for 2 hours, you're going to walk away and not vote. So the system has to be well funded and well organized. And that's, we're usually the only ones there advocating for this. When it's budget time, we're the ones that advocate for funding for the Office of Elections because, like everything, you get what you pay for.
Right.
And so getting the proper funding is very important, and the league is very much recognized. If I go down to Richmond and I speak to the Privileges and Elections Committee, they know what I'm talking about. They know that they can trust what I say, okay, about elections. And so we advocate for elections that are well funded and well organized.
I think that's important. A couple of weeks ago I was speaking about nonprofit advocacy and talking about how nonprofits have to advocate because that's how you get change. And people down in Richmond respect it when you bring real people, real stories, real issue, real data to them so they can be educated. Everyone assumes that legislators who look at 3,000 bills in 45 days understand the issues.
Yeah, and they don't always. And so they rely on people like the league, groups like the league, to explain to them why online voter registration is so important. Now when you go to DMV, they have a kiosk where you can register to vote right there. It feeds immediately. I can't tell you how many times we've had elections where people say, but I registered at DMV. You did not.
Right.
You submitted an application, and unless you get something back, you're not registered. And so now that whole process has been streamlined, so it goes directly in. And this is important. We feel that the automatic voter registration keeps the list clean. So when you change your address at the Department of Motor Vehicles, it automatically can change your address at
for your voter registration, right?
Yes, and so that's very important. That keeps the list clean, because what happens and what you're hearing a lot of is, there are people that are registered in 3 states and stuff. What happens is you move. We have a very mobile society, and so if you moved from New York to Virginia, you may not cancel your registration because you didn't think about it.
Who would?
And Virginia is supposed to go ahead and send a notice to New York. But like everything, that's kind of at the bottom of the list.
Right.
And so by working with DMV, which is the database that's used, the lists are cleaner. In Virginia, we do very well with different cross-checks so that the lists are kept fairly clean.
Right. And I think people don't understand that elections are particular to a specific state. So, all of us do our elections the way we do them. So sharing data, like who's registered across state lines, would be at the bottom of the list, because our resources and our money and our personnel are focused on making sure our voter rolls are clean and we have real people registered who are legitimate voters.
And elections are the bailiwick of the states. So every state does it slightly differently. In Virginia, we have a commissioner of elections that runs the Department of Elections. In other states, it's the Secretary of State. So it's the unique way that it is put into our Constitution. And so the rules are slightly different. Some states like California will send out the entire ballot ahead. Virginia doesn't do that. The league then in the community does a voter's guide that is nonpartisan, so that people have a place to go to research. Because again, we're more likely to get news from DC than to get news that's only particular to Virginia, especially in the northern part of Virginia. Everything's handled down in Richmond.
That's true. That's true. And that's why we need to come back in our second segment to talk about technology, talk about what goes on in Richmond, and how this is affecting nonpartisan redistricting. So please join us after the break so we can talk a bit more with Olga.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. runaway. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me tonight is Olga Hernandez of the League of Women Voters here in Fairfax. She is the past president of the state League of Women Voters. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So we are talking about nonpartisan redistricting, and
Yes.
that is something, again, that people might have heard, may have seen it in the press, but not really sure what that means.
Okay. Redistricting is the drawing of the maps of legislative districts that particular candidates run from, whether it's your House of Delegates, your congressperson, your state senator. They have a particular map. Gerrymandering is the name that's given to the manipulation of these districts so that they generally are drawn at the state General Assembly, and whoever is in charge draws it to their favor. And this is a bipartisan issue because the Democrats have done it,
right,
and the Republicans have done it. So now the Republicans are in charge of the state legislature, and so they have drawn them to their favor.
But this is attached uniquely to the U.S. Census.
Yes. In Virginia, the census is taken every 10 years. In 2010, 2020. That's the organization is called Virginia 2021 because the next redistricting will be done in 2021, and so we will get the numbers in the spring of 2021 from the census that's taken, and then the districts will be drawn. What we want, and the state constitution gives you criteria of how these districts are supposed to be: compact, contiguous, and so these districts, when they're drawn, they follow the maps. What has happened, especially since the late 70s, 80s with computerization, we have some very sophisticated computer programs that can slice and dice districts. Exactly,
down to the household.
Down to the household. Sometimes the division is done right down the middle of the street. So it breaks up communities of interest, which is unfortunate. We were talking about Norfolk, where it has it's a city,
the second largest apparently in Virginia. I heard.
And it has representation from nine different
districts in the House and Senate.
Okay, and none of the representatives actually live in Norfolk, which is untenable. How can they really represent if they don't have their feet on the ground in the community? And so, but it is drawn to favor whatever party has drawn the lines. In Virginia, the legislature, the Privileges and Elections Committee, which is the oldest committees in the legislature, draw the districts. And then it's taken, a committee is appointed of sitting legislature. And what happens is, that's like the fox guarding the hen house.
Right, that's
because
the analogy.
They are protecting their own seats.
Right.
So this last time when we had an election, many seats were not even contested, because if you know you're going to lose because the district is so drawn that it protects one party or the other, having competitiveness is out of the norm. We were talking about in 2015, $45 million were spent on these elections, and not one seat changed parties.
Right. Every incumbent was reelected.
Every incumbent was reelected.
Everyone.
And so what's the effect of that? You get more partisan divisions. You get people that are so comfortable in their own little base that they don't have to speak to the other side. So there is no such thing as compromise and comedy. And so we have a broken system. What we advocate is it should be taken out of the legislature's hands, and drawn by a nonpartisan or a bipartisan committee of citizens. In Virginia, there are some states that have done this, but they have the advent of being able to put up an initiative on the ballot. Virginia doesn't have that option. So we have gone to the legislature time and again for the last 20 years with bills written by Republicans and Democrats.
Both.
Okay? And these bills are killed.
Subcommittee.
In subcommittees at 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes on a holiday.
And we might as well mention, while we're mentioning that, is that tomorrow at 7 a.m. On the 9th floor of the General Assembly building, they're going to hear the 3 remaining bills that have any life left in them, now that it's crossover. They will be heard by the Subcommittee for Election.
And these bills were passed by the state Senate, not on a close vote. They were passed well with good margins. They cross over to the House of Delegates. And unfortunately, in the House of Delegates, these subcommittees that are 3 or 4 members instead of the entire 100 members, okay, will vote. And time again, they have killed these bills. Hopefully, this won't happen, but unfortunately, my experience is that the powers that be do not want these bills to happen because they're, it's against their own self-interest. And so what we want to make sure is, especially this year, because the entire House of Delegates will be on the ballot, that voters challenge their delegates to support this, but also, if they don't support it, to challenge them as to why and demand that they explain and they advocate for it. It's very important because we have a broken system. And so, Virginia has 140 members in the General Assembly, 40 are senators. The senators are not up for election this year, but the entire House of Delegates is. They get elected every 2 years.
And some of those districts are in fact bulletproof. And to your point, you don't have to necessarily work with the other side if you know that your seat really is not in jeopardy.
Exactly.
The only way that they're in jeopardy, and this is something that Governor Terry McAuliffe has pointed out, is that it's primaries that put these people in jeopardy, which means they tend to work toward the outer fringes of their party, which is where the challenge comes from.
The challenge generally comes from their left or their right. And so the primary becomes the default election. And the primaries have very low turnout. Okay, we had in Fairfax County, we had an over 80% voter turnout for the presidential. This fall, where the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and the entire House of Delegates will be up on the ballot, the turnout will drop by more than 50%.
Right, and in the primaries, Justin Fairfax was saying yesterday that when he ran for Attorney General in 2013, 141,000 people, that's 3% of eligible voters, 3% decided in a primary whose name would be on the ballot.
And generally, if you win your primary, okay, you're a shoo-in at the general election. And so that's just not giving the voters a real choice, because the candidates actually pick their voters instead of the voters picking the outcome of the election.
Right, and our founding fathers could not have understood what computers and technology and data parsing would mean for knowing who on any given street has turned up for a primary, what magazines they get, where they work. People don't know how you vote because it's a secret ballot.
Right.
But there's lots of data available everywhere.
That indicates how you vote.
And so it's predictive modeling from data.
Right.
Is what it is.
And these computer programs are very, very sophisticated. And so you will see these, if you go on the state website, you will see these maps and you go like, why is there a congressional district that goes from the state line in the south all the way up to Fauquier County?
Right.
Hundreds of miles. Okay? We have a congressional district that goes from McLean, which is where the sitting congressperson lives, all the way to the state line.
With West Virginia.
With West Virginia, which has very little in common.
Very little.
Okay, and so we believe that these districts should be drawn more compactly, but also without the advent of incumbent protection.
Right, and there was a contest back in 2011 that...
Back in 2011 when the current districts were drawn, the league worked with a coalition of other interested, and this is a bipartisan coalition.
Right.
It's Republicans and Democrats and independents who worked, and we had a contest of college students giving them the parameters that the Constitution outlines and say, draw better districts that are more competitive without taking into account incumbent protection. And they did a marvelous job. And they drew these districts. We took them to the General Assembly, and they absolutely refused to look because it didn't protect their seats. And so this is the elected official protecting themselves and their party.
Right.
Okay? And it's Democrats have done it in the past, Republicans have done it. But it doesn't serve the average voter. When there is no reason to speak to the other side, we get the government we have, which is very partisan and divided right now. And so there's a lot of stalemate and nothing really advances that is reasonable.
Very problematic. And I know that in other states, California had Proposition 11 back in 2008 that was passed under a Republican governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that Ohio has also put in redistricting reform under a Republican governor, John Kasich.
Exactly. But again, they have the initiative option. In Virginia, we do not have initiatives that go on the ballot. It has to come through the legislature. And we have gone for years with bills written by Republicans, written by Democrats, because
it depends on who's in.
If you poll people, people understand, okay, that this is a broken system. Okay, so redistricting done by a commission is well supported, but the powers that be don't want it.
Are not going to approve that.
And they're not going to approve it. And so our remedy has in the past been going to the courts.
Yes, and that is one of the options, is litigation. Not our first choice, not anybody's first choice to go to the courts.
We have tried to go through the legislative system, and we get blocked every time.
Well, join us after this break, because we're going to talk with Olga Hernandez more about redistricting. So please join us after the break.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Tonight we're talking about nonpartisan redistricting. My guest is the wonderfully informative Olga Hernandez, who is with the Fairfax League of Women Voters, past president of the state organization, and who has been on the front lines of nonpartisan redistricting probably since Ken Plum put in his first bill in 1982, which is a long time ago.
Yes, and at that time the Democrats were in control of the General Assembly. So this is both sides.
Absolutely. We can't point to one party or the other. There's equal blame to sort of go around. But there is a new organization called One Virginia 2021. They've been doing a lot of work on this. I know they've been working with the League on this. They've produced a documentary film called Jerry Rigged, and we'll talk about that and where it's going to be showing. The League is sponsoring that. But they've also created a character called Jerry Mandering. And this character, who is an incumbent legislator, is sort of a figure that they're trying to use to explain to people what gerrymandering is and also what the benefits are to an incumbent promoting the idea that districts should be drawn as to the voters, not drawing the district as to how the voters should elect. So we have a little clip from YouTube that we'd like to show about gerrymandering. And again, this is something that Virginia 2021, you can find it out on YouTube. And so let's take a look at it.
And now, from Capitol Square in Richmond, a message from your representative, gerrymandering.
Drinky, drink, drink. There you go. Have a little sip of water. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I'm gerrymandering, and I'm representing you in Virginia's General Assembly. I was just tending to my succulent here in my office. He's my best friend and my #1 priority. I wanted to take a moment and address you, my most dedicated supporters. During my campaign, I pledged to eliminate competition in elections and take away voter rights by redrawing district maps to make it easy to win every time I run. I also asked for your support in my re-election campaign. In the end, I'm happy to report that I was sent back to Richmond along with every single one of my colleagues that ran for re-election too. It's true, both houses stayed exactly the same. Nothing changed. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that hard-fought race that I pretended to run. Sure, I ran completely unopposed, but I know that if anyone actually ran against me, they would have been worthy adversaries. You see, as a long-time elected official, I can draw the lines to my own district however I want. I can look at things like voting patterns, demographics, average neighborhood income. Heck, I can even see what magazines you subscribe to, and I can get a pretty good sense of whether or not you'll be voting for me. Which is why when we redraw the lines in 2021, I'll be armed with as many facts and figures as I can get my hands on to make sure I can just draw anyone out of my district who may not be on board with little old me. And the best part of it all? Doing this is completely legal in Virginia. That's right, using political data to choose the voters I want in my district, totes okay. Now, there are some nonpartisan groups like One Virginia 2021 that want to make political redistricting illegal. They like to ask my colleagues and me questions, and to be honest, super annoying and crazy rude. Sometimes they'll ask, is redrawing district lines like this fair? Or does it undermine the foundation of our democracy? Or even, does it eliminate competition in elections? But to those who have questions about the fairness of this process, I have a question for you. Who's going to water my plant if I'm not here anymore? Why do you hate my plant so much? Why do you hate Gary? He's done nothing to you. He's a great, sensitive, sweet soul. And so, my fellow Virginians, thank you for your ongoing support. I'd say I couldn't have done it without you, but you know.
If you want fair, competitive elections, contact your legislator today.
No, that's literally the opposite of what I want.
One Virginia 2021 has made it easier than ever to make your voice heard. Visit our website today to support our efforts.
Who's saying that? How did you get in here?
It's a public building, and you leave your key under the mat.
Oh, right. That's on me. That's fair.
Approved and paid for by One Virginia 2021.
So one of the things that I think One Virginia 2021 is trying to do too and that really showcases how they're also trying to appeal to the millennials. You know, people who may not have been particularly paying attention during civics class in the 8th grade, and trying to re-engage them in a sense of what is just, right, and fair in elections. Engaging young people is important because they're going to be voting for the next 50 years. And it's important to have them understand what this issue is, why they need to care, and what they can do.
Exactly. This gerrymander is a pretend candidate. He's not a real candidate, but he stands just like real candidates do. And what happens is there's no incentive for them to reach to anyone that may disagree on an issue. So you get these very strict partisan information and bills that do not really solve the real problems that we have in the state. And so there's a lot of ideology, and because most of the elections are won at the primary,
right?
Okay, the primaries tend to bring out the very fringes of either the left or the right that are the people that generally participate in primaries. So it's very important to participate in a primary. Choose one or the other, because it is important, because that's generally who will win the November election. And as he said, this last election for the House of Delegates,
nothing changed.
No, $45 million were spent and nothing changed.
And then people wonder why things are not coming out of our legislative sessions that are the bills that represent the values that we care about.
Right. That, you know, the state legislature is the one that does education funding for roads and bridges and mass transit. Those are all things that are important to your daily life. And so you don't want, those things are not ideological. They are for the
They're
good,
practical. They're practical.
They're kitchen table issues that everybody gets touched by. And so it's health care, it's it's the environment, it's whether we are doing ash ponds, okay? And they affect everybody's daily life. So
one of the greatest explanations I saw about why people need to be interested in redistricting is it might not be the most important problem, but it is the first problem that has to be solved so that we can solve the most important problems.
Exactly. And redistricting is one of these arcane and people's eyes glaze over, but it's the foundation of how those districts are drawn so that you get better government, because you get candidates that are actually not just ideologues, but are trying to solve problems. And most people that run, most politicians and most people that run for election have the idea of solving problems, but then their parties are entrenched and they vote the party line instead of the common sense of how to serve their constituents.
So there's two bills coming from there's three bills that are going to be heard tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. And by the way, 7 a.m. in a subcommittee is where bills go to die.
Yes.
Because there is no recorded vote. It's generally a voice vote. It's not broadcast. Progress Virginia has been live streaming some of these things. I think One Virginia 2021 has been videotaping some of these things. But by and large, much of the thousands of bills every legislative session go to a 7 a.m. subcommittee hearing to die. That's why they're scheduled that way.
Right.
And so we've got three bills up at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning in the General Assembly building.
And these bills, some of them were written by Republicans, some by Democrats. So we've got a bipartisan thing here. They passed the Virginia Senate, not on a close vote at all. But once they cross over to the House of Delegates, the House has to pass them before they can go before the governor.
Right.
And if they get killed by three legislatures at 7 o'clock in the morning, the entire House of Delegates of 100 members don't get a chance
to
never
get to vote on it. And I really think people...
And so it's three people make the decision for 100 members. And that is a problem.
It is, and I don't think people understand how the sausage is made if you've never really looked at it. And now would be the time, now that people have awakened to like, how did we get here? What has gone wrong? This is, you have to understand how the sausage is made. And so the subcommittee is one of those points at which a bill can die. You know, then it goes to the committee, it can die in the committee. Then it gets readings on the floor of the House, you know, and it goes to a floor vote, and it can be killed there, never make it to the other chamber. I mean, there's all these places where bills can die. And I don't think people understand that engaging with organizations like the League, with organizations like One Virginia 2021, and understanding the pressure points at which your voice, showing up, sending an email, knowing who the committee members are, knowing if you're a constituent of somebody on that committee, all of those things are critically important.
This brochure will tell you who represents the Fairfax area. Your voting card will tell you what district you're in. And you need to know who your House of Delegate member, who your state senator is, and be in touch with them because they hold the balance. Okay.
And I'll tell you a very cool tool. When I took a young woman down who testified in front of a subcommittee on the Earned Income Tax Credit, we were walking down the sidewalk and we pulled up the VPAP mobile app. And you can type your address in the VPAP mobile app and it will tell you everybody who represents you, your congressman, your state senator, your delegate, and because she didn't know. So there are handy free tools.
The League has vote411.org, which will also, you put your address in and it will tell you who represents you at the state level.
So this
and
is
it's
great.
very important.
Right, people need to know.
Because you need to know because of the importance of how they vote and how it affects your life. And it's just kitchen table issues. But redistricting is the start because if those districts are drawn so safely for one party or the other, there's no incentive to listen.
Right, and we're looking at another election cycle. So 2015, every incumbent came back and nothing changed. And so we're looking at that again. And that does make people cynical to think, well, it's just another election where another 100 people are up again running for re-election. And so how can I affect change if we can see that $45 million didn't move the needle?
Right. And so it's very important to vote in your local elections, whether it's your school board, your board of supervisors, your House of Delegates, your state senate. Those are important issues because they touch your life a lot closer. We provide you the information for you to make the decision on your values, but we provide that nonpartisan, neutral information.
And we're going to talk about that more when we come back.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Tonight we're talking about nonpartisan redistricting with Olga Hernandez of the League of Women Voters here in Fairfax. She's the past president of the state organization, and she is working currently with an organization called One Virginia 2021, who's doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this issue here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be in a coalition with One Virginia 2021.
One Virginia 2021 comes from the contest that we did back in 2011, right after the first redistricting. The executive director was actually one of the map drawers.
Brian Cannon.
Yes, Brian Cannon. And it is a coalition of like-minded people that are Republicans, Independents, Democrats, that believe there's a better way. And so One Virginia 2021 has worked with the legislature trying to get some of these bills for changes. In 2011, we actually were able to get the sitting governor to appoint a commission to look at redistricting. We did that, but then he did nothing with the commission. It was just placate.
For
placate.
show?
But
Yeah.
we also did find that there was a better way. And so, you know, here we are, 7, 8 years later.
Right.
We're gearing up for the 2021. That's the whole reason of One Virginia 2021 for fair redistricting, and they're going around the state. There is a movie called Jerry Rigged, which explains, and you saw the clip earlier, explains redistricting, what has happened in Virginia, and why the system is rigged. And so the League is working with One Virginia 2021. We have been working with them for years. We're part of the coalition. And we're going to be showing this movie, which was produced by a PBS station in Richmond, WCVE. And the movie will be shown on the 23rd of February at the Cinema Arts in
Fairfax City.
Fairfax City.
Lovely Fairfax City.
In a movie theater.
Right.
We actually booked a movie theater that held 140 people. It sold out in 2 days. We moved to a theater that holds 250 people. That sold out too. And so we had to add another showing. We will be having a showing at 4 o'clock and a showing at 7, and we will be doing a closed to the public showing at Green Springs at 1 o'clock. So the showing of the movie, which is only an hour long, but it does a good visual explanation of this problem that we have and how there is a better way. And what we're trying to do is get legislatures to understand there is a better way. We want to work with the legislature, but the only remedy that has been left to us is going to the courts. And this last year, there was a case that was brought by the Democrats, where the 3rd congressional district, which is a minority majority district, was packed with so many minorities that the courts found that it was not done properly, and so the legislature refused to redraw the districts as the court suggested. So the judges redrew the districts. So the 4th congressional district and the 3rd congressional district boundaries were redrawn, and so we have another minority elected.
Right. So that was Don McEachin.
Don McEachin
was elected, and I think the Supreme Court was the court that ended up deciding on those lines, because we were talking a little earlier about,
the Supreme Court sent it back to the district court and the district court.
Right, because issues, whether they're federal issues. This happened to be a constitutional issue.
Right.
You know, we were a voting rights state. That was gutted several years ago. There used to be special oversight for certain southern states.
Yes.
That
provided pre-clearance of whenever you were going to do anything, any changes in election law, redistricting and such, that you had pre-clearance. You had to send it to the Justice Department for them to say, yay or nay, yeah, this is on the up and up. Well, that was gutted. And so, but the court case went through and the lines were readjusted. We are also, there was also a case at the Supreme Court that was heard in December. The decision has not come down, but that affects 11 legislative districts in Virginia, not congressional districts, but legislative districts that were not drawn compactly enough, and that by the admittance of the legislatures, that they basically used political
Yes, that was kind of a strange admission.
Yes,
like,
it was admission in open
yes, we
court.
did that.
Yeah, we did that.
We did that.
And so there was a case that came down from Wisconsin also that said maybe that's not such a good idea, which is the first time that the courts have said that political interest is not the best way to do this.
So the U.S. Supreme Court in this particular case that you're talking about, the one in December, is basically holding us to our own Constitution.
Right. It's and it's about keeping us in line with the Constitution
of Virginia.
Of Virginia.
Of Virginia.
Because again, the U.S. Constitution leaves elections to the states. So every state does things slightly differently. The population is different. We're not a square state where you can cut it up,
into nice, neat squares.
To nice, neat squares. But at the same time, it should not be, the districts should not be so wildly drawn that that you've got districts that look like ink blots with tentacles. They look,
like a Rorschach test.
A Rorschach test.
Kind of one of the things they do in the movie.
And this is not a new problem. The term gerrymandering comes from 1812.
I know. Massachusetts claims to be first, but we know that Virginia's always ahead of Massachusetts.
Exactly. Patrick Henry drew out a district to get Madison out.
Right.
Okay, of a district. He wound up being president later, but they did not, they drew the lines.
So that was the first intimation Patrick Henry had, that there's a different way of making
controlling things.
Yeah, who gets elected, or so they thought.
Oh, so they thought. And sometimes these things really backfire.
They do.
That's one of the cases that backfired because they just promoted him up.
Right, right.
But at the same time, is it fair? We want equitable districts drawn that the voter can then have an actual choice when they go to the ballot.
And one of the, as you said,
and it's not always going to be perfect because people self-segregate. Okay,
they do,
so you're not
in neighborhoods, in communities.
But at the same time, cities and communities of interest shouldn't be chopped up in 9 different pieces.
Absolutely, like Norfolk, 9 different districts in one city.
Okay, so there should be communities of interest and competitiveness taken into. They should be compact so that you don't have these, these districts that are only connected by a road where nobody lives.
Right.
Okay, but they want to catch that other jurisdiction
claiming
at
that
the
it's
end.
Contiguous. Claiming that it's contiguous down a road.
And contiguous just means it has to touch.
Right.
But at the same time, you get these odd districts that don't have anything to do with.
They don't have anything in common. As you point, the 10th CD is an example of, a suburban Northern Virginia community of McLean has nothing in common with a very rural, very western community that touches West Virginia. There's just that
Clark
district.
County and Fairfax County have very, very little in
common. They've added in the rural counties to counterbalance the urbanism of the voters on the McLean side.
The districts have to be basically the same population okay?
Right.
But you can do it better. And that's what we're saying, that taking it out of the sitting legislators' hands is a better way of doing it. So we advocate for commissions of non-sitting legislators.
I agree with that.
Okay, and so that's part of what we're doing. So we invite you to try to go to the showing of
Jerry Rigged.
The movie is about an hour long. We will have a discussion panel at the end. This will be the 23rd of February.
And if there are other organizations out there who want to host a showing, how would they go about putting together the kind of event you're...
I think you would contact onevirginia2021.org.
Right.
And they could get you in touch with, they can have a speaker.
Right.
They can show them the movie, because the idea is to get the information out so people are educated on what it is. Redistricting is one of those topics that are kind of down in the weeds and people sort of glaze over, but people don't realize how important it affects everything else in elections.
It is the problem we have to solve first. I think that's one of the best ways, in my mind, to frame the whole issue of nonpartisan redistricting. It is the problem we must solve first, or we can't solve any of the other problems on our agenda.
I invite you to go to lwv-fairfax.org to find out more information about that. The League has seen a resurgence of membership.
For both men and women.
Men and women. For people to get engaged in their community and learn more about issues like this and how important they are to your daily life. And people don't always realize, they go to the ballot and they don't know the mechanism how everything happens before you get to the ballot. And that's the important part. The League has observes the State Board of Elections, observes the Fairfax County Board of Elections, the Fairfax City Board of Elections, so that we know we're at the table to observe how the policy is made and how it's carried out. We're kind of on the ground from the beginning. We're at the state legislature to get that. We just need them to pay more attention to us.
And I'll give a plug to Inside Scoop as well, because a lot of the debates that you have hosted in the past have been televised here on Inside Scoop. Jim Southworth has gone out and done remote shoots, and he is very good about helping organizations with their AV and recording different kinds of debates and events. And so watch this space on Inside Scoop to find out when we are going to have televised candidates debates going forward in 2017.
Remember to check your registration online at vote.virginia.org. You can find your online registration, so you can check your registration. Make sure you participate in the primaries and be ready to vote November 7th.
Thank you so much, Olga. I so appreciate you being here. You are a wealth of information.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. This is what the League does.